Azerbaijan presents a documentary film by Nonna de Gübek, Baku, Secrets of Ancient Fires. The author of the script and director, Nonna de Gübek. Cameraman, Elchan Guliev, Rustam Zulalov. Editor, Elshan Hasanov. I love my city Baku so much that I want to tell about it to the whole world. Drawings on the ancient stones of Gobestan reflect the lives of generations long past. Today, scientists try to decipher these messages left by the artists living in the 8th millennium BC. Similar rock inscriptions were found by scientist Tur Heyerdahl in Norway, where there is a legend about kings who came from places, by all accounts, very similar to Azerbaijan. Azerbaijan is one of the ancient centers of human civilization, the land of wizards and the motherland of Zoroastrianism. According to some, it is the Caspian Sea where the ancient city of Atlantis vanished. The city of Baku has a history stretching back almost 3,000 years. The name Baku is derived from Bug, which means in Old Persian and in Indo-European languages God or sun, that is, the city of God or the place of God. Baku was so called because there was located one of the main temples of fire worshippers, named subsequently Guzgalazi, Maiden Tower. Some historians believe that Guzgalazi is a protective defensive tower of the 12th century. Some consider it to be a 7-altar, 8-story tower temple of Great Mitra or ancient Ahura Mazda, 8th to 7th century BC. Other scientists think that Guzgalazi was a Zoroastrian dakhama or observatory. The Maiden Tower was built on a ledge of coastal rock. From time to time, the sea reached its foot. The first time the sea approached the tower's walls was in 1306. The Maiden Tower is 29 meters high. Its diameter is 16 meters. The walls at the foot are 5 meters thick. The walls of the tower are of such thickness that they could resist the impact of the strongest battering ram and stone-throwing artillery, which is why it has survived until today. There are some legends about the Maiden Tower. In ancient times, a widowed Shah decided to marry his own daughter. Horrified by the forthcoming marriage to her father, she placed a condition to construct for her a tower. When the tower was constructed, she threw herself into the sea. The marriage of father and daughter, or brother and sister, in the Sassanid epoch, in the 5th to 6th centuries AD, was considered a sacred custom in Transcaucasia, recommended by the Church. So the Shah's intention was not a whim, but the observance of an intrinsic and sacred tradition. According to another legend, the ancient city Babe Cube, surrounded in 3 rows with castled walls, was designed by enemies for 90 days. Inside these walls, the black smoking temple made all rites to rescue the sacred hearth. The main priest of the temple, the fire, announced to the fire worshippers, "Tomorrow Shah will be killed. One innocent force will kill him." Suddenly, the doors of the temple opened, and near the smoking fire stood a fiery maid with fiery flowing hair, with a fiery sword in her hands. "You must rescue the sacred city, the capital of inextinguishable fires," the priest told her. The maiden, with a face like the moon, went up to the armies of the mighty Nur-Eddin. The fiery maiden released her compatriots, but fell in love with her commander, killed by her, and, preferring to die after the demise of the man she loved, she thrust the sword into her breast, her soul to rest eternally in the temple in front of the sacred fire. The fires of the temple went out and turned into a tower of release named in honor of the doomed maiden, Guzgalazi. After 7 days of hurricane winds, dim fires started burning far from the fortified walls of the sacred city Badkub. They were magical and sparkled in memory of the fiery maid. And right in this new place was erected a temple which sheltered all priests from the fire, illuminating the souls of the believers in the virtue of the sacred flame. In ancient times, the fire of Baku made it one of the most venerated sanctuaries of the Zoroastrian fire worshippers. From all over the world, people flocked here to worship, an eternal flame coming from the well. The water was salty, but suddenly it disappeared. A burning cord was thrown in to find out what happened, and the well ignited immediately. And since then, the fire has never gone out. The Ateshka constructions, which have survived almost complete, date back to the beginning of the 18th century. In those times, when Zoroastrianism was the main religion of Azerbaijan, the followers of this religion built their sanctuaries and temples in places which naturally produced spontaneous ignition gases, which they worshipped. These temples were called Ateshka, which in Farsi language means place of the fire, the house of the fire. Via ancient trade routes, the caravans with Indian luxury goods arrived and took away with them not only salt, oil, silk, but also stories about wonderful fires on the coast of the Caspian Sea. And Hindu pilgrims were drawn to the distant Absheron to worship the fire. Even today, the adherents of Zoroastrianism revere this place. A recent example of this being when a pilgrim from India visited Ateshka, he asked the museum manager to burn his body after death in this temple of sacred fires. By the beginning of the first millennium BC, such large slave-owning states as Mana and Media had settled in the territory of Azerbaijan. In the middle of the 6th century BC, these lands came under the authority of the Amanidian kings of Iran. But at the end of the 4th century BC, the government of part of these lands was restored after invasion by the armies of Alexander the Great. Ancient writers named this state Atropatenia, after the name of the governor of one of the southern areas of Azerbaijan. As a consequence, Iranians named the state Azerbaijan, and Arabs named it Azerbaijan and Azerbaijan. In the middle of the 9th century appeared the great reign of the Shirvan Shahs. For a long time, the capital of the state was the city of Shamaha, and in the 15th century, Halilullah I transferred the capital to the city of Baku. Halilullah was the son and successor of Ibrahim I, whose reign was contemporaneous with the victories of the outstanding commander of the East, Emir Temur. When in 1386, Emir Temur decided to conquer Azerbaijan, Ibrahim, trying to protect his state, went to Temur. He presented him with gifts, 9 copies of each, according to the Oriental tradition, but he presented only 8 slaves. When Emir Temur asked why there were but 8 slaves, Ibrahim Shah answered, "Master, the 9th slave I am. I prefer my being slave to the destruction of my people." Temur liked this so much that he called him his son, presented him with noble attire, and appointed him the governor of Shirvan and Shamaha. Thus the Shah saved his people from the bloodshed. The fortification gates connect 2 most beautiful parts of the city, ancient Baku, Ichere Shaha, and old Baku, Baku Forsta. You can see the composition above the gates, cut on a stone depicting 2 lions, which guard a massive bull's head. This was the coat of arms of ancient Baku. In 1683, a German traveler and scientist, Kempfer, visited Baku and interpreted the coat of arms. The bull's head symbolized the city of Baku. The images of moon and sun were symbols of day and night. Together, the intricate arms meant the following: lions, fortress walls guard the bull, the city during the day and night. These walls saw the storm of Mongol Tatars, the siege of the troops of Shah Ismail Safavi, bombardment by the armies of Peter the Great, and near these very walls, the head of the Russian army general, Tsitsianov, was cut off. Local limestone served as the building material for fortress walls. Local limestone served as the building material for fortress walls. For mortar, a strong limestone solution mixed in milk, egg fibers, and camel wool was applied. The wall's length was about 500 meters. The walls surrounded the city in 2 and even in 3 lines. Thus, the city was embraced like a ring, like a jewel in its setting. The Baku Fortress is an open-air museum with an area of 22 hectares, a unique treasury of medieval architecture embodies in stone the history of Baku. There are 44 ancient monuments in a fortress. Time has kept the silhouette of a feudal city. The picturesque narrow streets with steep widening steps, unexpected bends and turns make it a model medieval city. The Shirvanshah Palace complex, built mainly in the 15th century, is located on top of one of the hills of the fortress area. On the area, equal to 1 hectare, there is a well-preserved palace, Divan Khan, burial chamber of the Shirvanshahs, a palace mosque with minaret, bath, ovdan, mausoleum of the court scientist Syed Yaha Bakuvi, an oriental entrance portal. The upper courtyard was designed for official ceremonies. The lower courtyard consisted of 2 sites and had a more intimate character. The modest furnishings of this huge building, which don't even have a main entrance, is in complete contradiction with the representations of Middle Eastern royalty's love of luxury and splendor. The exact date of the construction of the palace has yet to be ascertained. Probably there was a sanctuary at the top of Baku Hill on which the Shirvanshahs constructed for themselves a cult memorial complex, and the palace itself had probably not yet been established. The 2-storied building consists of 52 rooms. 3 narrow spiral staircases with high steps in these walls connect the floors. The structures of Divan Khan are located in a small square yard. In its center, on a promontory, stands a central octagonal pavilion, which it is thought was designed for sessions and state council, divan, court, about which the inscription on teapans of aperture say, "And God calls peace into the house, and he directs righteously those whom he wants. Those who do kind things will have good. Even in ambiance, neither dust nor infamy will cover their faces. They will be the inhabitants of paradise, where they will eternally reside." Most scientists believe it to be a mausoleum. Its construction was not completed, and various stages of processing of architectural details show this. It is curious that in our national myths, the whole territory of Divan Khan, especially an underground chamber with a well called dairy well, was considered a sacred place where women lacking milk while feeding infants recovered. The 8-sided mausoleum is publicly known as the Dervish Mausoleum, after Syed Yaha Bakuvi, an outstanding scientist at a courtyard of Halilullah I, buried there. As Baku was an adherent of Sufism, the followers of this doctrine were called dervishes. To belong to a Sufi order was very prestigious. The whole mausoleum is laid out with narrow and wide stone lines, closely set and perfectly edged. In the 15th century, Syed Yaha Bakuvi was the main spiritual teacher in this territory, his name associated with many occult sciences. 30 of his works on philosophy, astronomy, history, mathematics, and medicine have been uncovered. They say that by the end of his life, Syed Yaha Bakuvi refused food for 6 months to clean up his spirit. Traditionally, it is obligatory to leave the mausoleum with the face towards the entrance, thus showing respect to the spirit of the buried. For the non-ordained, such rite looks exotic, but they execute it with pleasure. This burial chamber was constructed by Shirvanshah Halilullah I for his mother and son. Later, other members of the family were buried there. During excavation, 7 tombs were found beneath the floor, but remains were in only 5 tombs. 2 were empty. According to the 15th century medieval treatise, the Safavidian governor, Shah Ismail I, avenging his grandfather and father, promised to profane the Shirvanshah's tomb, conferring the remains of the fire of hatred. He wanted to remove the remains, burn them, and disperse the ashes on the wind. Probably in 1501, when Baku was captured by the Safavids, the remains of the 2 tombs were uncovered and destroyed, and the others remained untouched. Next to the burial chamber, there is a bath. Like most Oriental baths, it has deep foundations, and all that could be seen outside were an entrance portal and the domes of large halls. Their tops ended in lanterns with holes for ventilation. This internal layout maintained the required temperature. The bath was supplied with water by a nearby Ovdan, a reservoir deep under the ground. The Palace Ovdan was one of the largest on the Absheron. It supplied drinking water not only to the palace but also to the population living nearby. There was a swimming pool in the center of the bath. There was a clear division between rich and poor in the waiting room, and well-off being served kalian and tea and standing on floors covered with carpets. As it was not accepted to bathe nude, the bath attendants distributed special on-hip bandages, fita, made from silk and flax. On certain days when the bath